meet people and stay in touch with them and really connect with them on a deeper level. Because when you're able to help, especially family and friends, do real estate, you get to know them on a whole other level. You get to know their, at least some sense of their financial status and where they're at financially, and to help them build generational wealth is a dream, and to help people get on that track and see the hope and see the light over time is really, really cool. So very rewarding. Well, I grew up in Orem. So Melissa, where do you live in Orem?
With JP Morgan Personal Advisors. Learn more at jpmorgan.com.
Okay, cool. So I grew up on the south side of Orem, just behind the Ashley Furniture Store, if you guys know that Community Parkway. And but I currently live in Eagle Mountain, so there's Lucas, so that's fine. But I've been doing real estate for 6 years now, and all with Keller Williams. I had a friend that works here, Stan Laramo, who's one of the best solo agents out there. He introduced me to Keller Williams, and I started right away, and now I haven't had a reason to leave. Dean's a big part of why I'm here, because he's so good at what he does and always answering calls, and very good at finding that balance between obviously keeping us out of trouble while at the same time trying to be successful. Sometimes it was a little bit of life. So the fun. Today we're going to talk about qualifying potential buyers and sellers. And I've got some stories that I will share if you guys don't mind about my own experience and things that have reminded me of that will help you guys hopefully not make some mistakes fast. Whenever I've made a mistake, my mentality is this is how I pay for my education. It means I will try to implement in my process somewhere to make sure that that mistake doesn't happen again. And to pay sometimes financially, sometimes just in time or whatever for that mistake, so that whoever was affected by that mistake doesn't feel like there was anything wrong. There's this term called service recovery. Has anybody ever heard of that before? They've done studies, and it's actually been proven that if you make a mistake as a business, especially in the services industry, like what we're in, if you make a mistake, but you correct it in a way that is satisfactory to the clients, their loyalty actually increases as opposed to somebody that you have a smooth transaction with, right? Does that make sense? So don't be afraid to make mistakes. Only be afraid if you make a mistake and not do anything about it. That's when there's a problem. If you make a mistake, it's okay. You can recover from it. You can, again, there was a time where I was helping somebody sell a house and helping them buy a house. And I, as the agent, didn't really think about the dates between move out and move in. I know that seems like such a simple thing. Until about 2.5 weeks into it, and I was like, oh, wait, you guys are closing on your house on a Tuesday, and you can't move into your new house on a Friday. And so that was, in my opinion, my 100% mistake. I should have been the wise agent to avoid that kind of thing happening. But I thought, well, it's okay. I'll just reach out to the sellers of the house they're buying and say, hey, can we close a few days early? Want to be just fine. So I reached out and I just what they had said. I said, no, by now we've got our plans made, we've got things arranged. We're not going to move sooner. I was like, that's fine. We'll ask the buyer and see if she can extend a little bit, and close a little bit later. She also said no. So that was a big problem. We had 3 days in between where they had to move out and they couldn't move into their new home yet. So what I did in this case, and it worked out really well, is I paid for a moving truck for them, where they kept their stuff for 3 days, as well as a hotel for them to stay at for 3 days. And then I gave them a nice gift card for a nice restaurant down at Ricky Brits, so that they could, have a really great night. As my sorry to them, and they were very grateful, they were understanding. And then on my side in the process, I made, I'm sure you guys all have your checklists of what to do when you have a client. That is one of my things in there, to make sure that I double check before I'm writing a contract, double check that the dates line up with how I need them to be for my client, whoever I'm working with, right? It's just a simple thing that I've never made that mistake again, fortunately, and hopefully never will. But I was able to overcome it, and those clients are still, to this day, good friends of mine and good clients. So don't be afraid to make a mistake. That was the first message I wanted to come across. Have you guys ever made mistakes before in real estate? Yep. Maybe, maybe not. You will. Everybody does. So just don't freak out when it happens. Just make sure, okay, take a step back. Who did I affect? How can I make it right for them? And then how can I avoid making this again in the future? Maybe okay. Good to it. So, okay. Any questions from you guys right off the bat? All right, feel free to stop me if you ever have a question or I'm curious about something. Is it kind of loud? Oh. There you go. How's that? Then I won't hear the Zoom people. I really can something about you. Oh, wait. I'll just pause it. There we go. Okay, sweet. All right. Do we have anybody on Zoom? I want to give them one more chance.
Yes, I'm here.
I know
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Has that happened before? Oh, I see. You guys are awesome. You've done this before. Oh, yes, she's here. Okay, let's get to it. And if you guys see them chat again, please let me know. So this is kind of today's overview. We're going to learn what it means to find the motivated. Then we're going to talk about classifying the able, ready, and willing buyers. And then we're going to learn what it means to qualify buyers and sellers, and then any recaps. Today, I wanted it to be a little bit more like a workshop. So where are your databases? Where do you keep where do you keep all of your contacts in real estate? You use Command, Lucas? Everybody? Awesome. I use Command. Command is great. And it's continually getting better. So that's awesome. And there are some specific tools that I'm familiar with in Command. And if you happen to be using something else, you can, any database will allow you to do tags. Are you guys familiar with the tags? Have you done that before? Okay, you've all, awesome. So that's part of what we're going to be talking about. But the first quote from Gary Keller in the book Shift: your number one job as a real estate agent is to find ways to get in the path of motivated buyers and sellers. Is that important? Let's state the obvious for a second. Lucas? Yeah. Okay, yeah, definitely. If they're unfamiliar with the territory and haven't done this before, they definitely need somebody by their side. Why is it important for us as agents to find the people that are motivated? So you have a job, right? When do you get paid? Once there's a closing, right? What if you took that deal all the way from start to finish, except they just didn't close? But that's the only thing they didn't do. What percentage of the commission do you get? 99? No, that doesn't happen. You get 0, right? Doesn't mean you didn't do anything, but because it didn't take it all the way to the closing table. I just had one of those that unfortunately canceled. They couldn't get their financing figured out, and we extended, and finally the seller was just like, we're not extending anymore, and our buyer was out of luck. So we had to find another deal. But it is important for us to find the motivated people. There was one client that I met early on through Zillow. So it was not somebody that I had known from before. Went and showed him a house, and then offered to help them find other houses, and I was able to help them out for a while. But after a little while, I started to realize that these guys weren't motivated, meaning it actually, in 3 years' time, they didn't buy a single house, but they would continually ask me to show them homes. And at first, I was totally fine with that. But then as I started to ask more questions and started to realize their habits and their nature, they weren't really going to buy, and ultimately could be seen as a waste of time for both them and for me, right? So it is important to find those that are motivated. And part of our job is to help them be motivated in natural, meaningful ways. I have a sibling that I was able to help buy real estate that would never have bought real estate, at least not at that point in her life, had it not been for discussions that she and I had together. And I was able to help her realize the importance and the value of buying real estate. She was in a position where she could do it. She did. Now she owns 2 homes and, is continuing on her way, which is awesome. But she wasn't necessarily motivated until we started having those conversations. So some of it is that we have to help motivate them, but others is just having us filter out who is motivated and who is not, right? Because this is an interesting job where you could do hours hours and hours and hours of work and still get paid zero because you didn't necessarily do the right work with the right people, right? So we have to be careful of that. All right. So any myths that come to mind? What myths do you hold about finding buyers and sellers? What are some things that you've either thought of or maybe heard of before about how to go about finding buyers and sellers? Lucas? Yeah, it's a bad market. You guys have all heard that before? Heard that a ton of times, right? Why do they say that it's a bad market? Hey, interest rates are higher. Yeah. Is that true? Yeah, they've been higher than they've been recently, right? So that there is truth to that. Home prices, what have they done? They're still high compared to most people. However, if you talk to somebody that moved just from California or from New York, what are they saying about our prices? Yeah, it's all a matter of perspective, right? The other part to this is that sorry, I just lost my train of thought. I don't know what I was going to say. Let's go on. Grace. Yeah, totally. Absolutely. One of my favorite ways to do that is to use the spare tire analogy and just to maybe it's okay in some circumstances to let them know and say, hey, you probably already know an agent or have already worked with somebody, but in case you need a second opinion on anything, or if you ever need an extra hand, or if they're unable to answer, if they're out of town, whatever you want to say, just think of me as a spare tire. That way, you're at least kind of still getting your foot in there a little bit without them feeling pressured that like, hey, I just want your business, right? But yeah, that's a good myth that could happen. I remember what I was going to say now. So how many deals, and you guys can say a number if you feel comfortable, how many deals, like transactions, would it take for you to say, I had a good year this year? Let's say in 2024. Anyone want to throw out a number? Okay. 36. Okay, perfect. Okay. Who else? Anybody else want to share a number? 5. That's great. Totally fine. Okay. Perfect. Great numbers. No, nothing wrong with either of them. How many transactions are there in Utah County in this year? If I'm the one asking, I should know the answer, but I don't. I did not look that up, but I know it's in the thousands, right? So what I'm getting at is that there are thousands, tens of thousands of deals happening all around us. Maybe that's tens of thousands less than was 3 years ago. That's possible. Maybe there are less overall, but how many do you need to make it successful? Whether it's 36 or 5 or more or less or anywhere in between, there are plenty of deals to go around. We just have to find the right people, the people that are ready, the people that are motivated, and the people that we can work with, right? So yeah, maybe the deals are less, but there's plenty of them out there for you as an agent. Okay, any other myths that you guys have heard? That's probably the biggest one, but and yours was a good one too. Okay, do you have one? You almost said something. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Ah, interesting. Yeah. Right. And I love that comparison because the reality is I do know this a little bit. Any guesses how many people call our office and say, hey, I'm looking to buy or sell real estate. Can you help me find an agent? Any guesses on how often that actually happens in a month? Maybe once, right? Doesn't happen very often. What do people normally do? In fact, some of the slides later will show it, but any guesses on where people go? Referrals, that's number one. Yeah, they go to a friend or a family. If they don't have an agent already, they say, hey, who have you guys used that you've liked, right? They don't come to our office. Maybe in a small town they do, but that's a very big difference. Absolutely. Cool.
And here we are. Next slide. So how buyers found their agent. I love this slide because this is how you ought to build your business. Go find the people, the majority. Referral from friend or family member, anybody that bought, and I'm assuming these stats were from last year, but these numbers have been very consistent over the years, so it doesn't really matter. 47% of all people that bought a home last year used an agent from either a friend, a neighbor, or a relative, a referral from a friend, neighbor, or relative. Or 13% of all buyers used that agent previously. So that's actually a pretty small number, right? Only 1 out of 10 almost. So what are the ahas just about this chart? There's 47% from referral, and then combined about 53% any other method. What does this tell you? Yeah, you got to talk to people. SOI is huge, right? Now, every agent's different. As I mentioned earlier, I remember somebody that stood out to me that when I was at Ignite that said that 100% of their business comes from friends, family, and referrals. And I was like, that's me. That's what I want. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to do that, where that's where my business comes from, is friends, family, and referrals. I don't pay for, online leads, and there's nothing wrong with those. It's just, that's not my style. Right. And, but yeah, most buyers find someone from someone they know. So the question is, how can you put yourself in a position to where friends and family are referring you? Any thoughts? Any ideas? Go ahead. 36 touch. Okay. Simply staying top of mind, right? Having your name come to their minds first when they think of who's a good real estate agent. Oh, Lucas, right? That's number one. Absolutely. And if you guys haven't read the MREA, the Millionaire Real Estate Agent, talks about 36 touch in there, very in depth. It's crucial for our business, right? Staying top of mind, coming from a place of value, reaching out, not just calling up your friends and saying, hey, you ready to buy or sell yet? Okay, fine. I'll call you in 6 months or whatever that is, right? It's more of, what do I have of value that I can give to somebody? And naturally, most of the time, those conversations happen where, hey, and by the way, I can't tell you how many calls I've had where I've just been talking to somebody. I may be inviting them to an event that I have, or I may be a seminar that I teach a first-time homebuyer seminar, just thinking about you guys and wanted to know if you knew of anybody that may be in a position to buy a home in the next couple of years for the first time. And then maybe, oh yeah, I think of somebody, or they may say no, but then oftentimes they're like, but we actually are thinking about moving next year, right? So many times that has happened simply because I'm in conversation, like Grace said, with these people. I don't think that most of those people would have called me necessarily, but because I was already talking to them about real estate, it's just like, oh, well, how convenient that you called. Just the other day, I had a cousin of mine that I called, with that. And he's like, oh, I'm really glad you called. I was thinking about doing this, right? So that's how it happens a lot. Probably, in my opinion, the number one metric to keep track of, and you guys I'm sure you're doing this, the difference between a lead measure and a lag measure, right? A lag measure is like something that you're like a goal that you have, like number of transactions. That happens after you've done certain other things, right? So yes, it's good to have that goal, but it's, in my opinion, even more important to have a lead measure that says, what do I have to do in order to get to that? And what I think is the most impactful thing to measure is the number of real estate related conversations you have in a week with people. And I'm not talking between agents, that doesn't count, with friends or family or people that you don't know, if you're getting leads or whatever that comes from. But how many times are you talking about real estate with somebody new? And if you can track that number and get that number as high as you can, that ultimately will result into appointments with those people. And then eventually appointments lead to contracts, and contracts lead to closings, right? You guys seen the sales funnel. So to me, that's where it starts, is number of real estate related conversations you have. So it's very important to track that and make sure that if you're doing nothing else in your business, that has to be done every single day. As I mentioned earlier, it's very easy to get sidetracked and be like, well, I got to make this beautiful Canva image and then I got to do this. Those can be great. I'm not knocking that at all. But if that's what you're doing for your business, it's not going to work. You're not going to be successful. The things that will work for your business and that have to be done first are the conversations. Then with your extra time, you do those other things. Right? Any thoughts about that? You guys want to push back on that at all? You can. I don't have all the answers. Okay, we all agree with that? Okay, awesome. So going back to this, the best way to get them to do that is first have conversation with them. I have my one other thing I really love about Keller Williams is it allows you to develop your own brand within Keller Williams. So I have mine, it's Keele Real Estate, it's my last name. I have a logo, and then I have a little motto that I have, which is relationship over transaction. And I have this little video that I'll send to my clients about me explaining what that means. And in it, I talk about how, have you guys ever gone to a tire shop and you get there, it doesn't have to be tire shop, could be anything, but you get there and you have a good experience, like things went well. They replaced your tires just like they should, and then they sent you on your way and you paid a fair value and everything was fine. Then maybe a couple days later, you have your mother or, a sibling or somebody very close to you says, hey, I feel like I need new tires. Do you know of any good places? How likely are you to recommend that place to them? Probably, you might, right? Okay, so that's kind of one level. Let's say that when you go to that tire shop, you have a terrible experience. It was really bad. They give you bad service. They left your car really dirty and greasy. They got the wrong size of tires, and then they didn't fix it, and then they charge you extra, all sorts of craziness. Then 2 days later, your close friend says, hey, do you know of any tire places? How likely are you to recommend that place at that point? Not at all. In fact, you'll probably do the opposite. I don't know of any good ones, but definitely don't go there, right? Well, I think it's clear to say that that's not the kind of agent we want to be, right? But in my opinion, the best way to get organic referrals where people are naturally advocating for you without you having to pressure them is because they have an exceptional experience with you that they know will be duplicated for their friends and family, right? So that, because nobody wants to be the person that says, oh, you should definitely use this place, and then they go use it and have a horrible experience, because that reflects poorly on you, right? That can damage your relationship a little bit. And so they have to have that utmost confidence in you that, hey, if you go to Sally, right? No, Stacy, that was close. If you go to Stacy, I know she's going to take care of you because she took such good care of me. And even though she made this one little mistake, she overcompensated to fix it, right? So I know that you're going to be in good hands if you go to Stacy. So that's the experience that I think we have to give them. So the question is, what can you do in your business to make sure that your clients are feeling that way when they work with you from start to finish and beyond, right? Part of your 36 touch program could be some of that stuff. Because again, if you're calling them and saying, hey, are you ready to buy or sell yet? I don't think they're having a good experience with that, right? But if you're giving them something of value and you say, hey, I have this awesome event coming up and I just wanted to invite your family, that may be pretty cool, right? And that's a big reason why events are so popular among real estate agents, is because it gives you an opportunity to call your friends and family with something of value that is fun or enjoyable or entertaining or whatever it may be, that makes that phone call so much easier. Because I have a hard time just calling someone up out of the blue and being like, hey, let's chat for 30 minutes without them feeling, because I worry, this goes back to the myths. If you maybe raise your hands if you've ever this way, that I worry that they're just thinking that I'm calling them because I want their business, right? And that may stop you from making calls sometimes. So I think for me, the best way I overcame that was, before I made a call to someone, have something of value that I'm going to offer them or give them on this, whether it's an invitation or, hey, I was looking up home values and I just saw yours, and man, do you realize how much equity you have in your home? That's so cool. Whatever it could be, but offer something of value. And then of course you're going to have the conversation about, well, what are you guys up to this summer? Did you do anything fun? And those can lead into those conversations. But I think that comes in a more natural way than to just call them. Because we've all had people reach out to us. I remember I hadn't talked to this person in 12 years and, since high school. And then they reached out to me on Facebook and just said, this long message of how much how it made me feel like we were best friends. And I'm like, I haven't even talked to you in 12 years. And then of course, at the very end, oh, and I just started doing this business and wanted to see if you wanted to be interested. I'm like, that's what we want to avoid, right? We don't want to come across as like, yeah, this is all fake, 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 fake. Buy from me. That doesn't work. Nobody, people see right through that. So I don't want to be that way. So again, to me, the best way is to just have good conversations with people by bringing something of value. And then of course, if there's a sale, they're great, but you're not necessarily asking for that directly, because then they get turned off by that a little bit, unless you're close enough to them. Any questions about that? Okay. Now I don't want to discredit all the other things, because there are other ways that you can find people. You can do open houses. You can get referrals from other agents. I know there are agents that build their business off of connecting with other agents throughout the country, so that when they have somebody moving to Utah, they call you. There's a lot of different ways to do it. But the question is, what does your business look like? Where do you want your business to come from? And how can you maximize that? Is there anything else other than friends, family, and referrals that you guys are planning to use in your business? Any other sources of finding people to buy and sell? Could be one of those other ones. Go ahead. Open houses. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. I love it. And so you can, and I know that Keller Williams has playbooks for open houses, from delivering flyers beforehand to, following up with people that come to the open houses and everything, and all of that. And yeah, I've had some clients that have been that I've met through an open house and now have purchased again, or have sold their home and done something else. Right. So the cool thing about all of this stuff is that ultimately everything can funnel back into those first and second ones. Really the second one, if they've used you before, and hopefully again that they've had such an exceptional experience the first time that they have no question that they're going to use you again, right? Because it's a relationship. It's not just a one-time transaction. So yeah, open houses. Any other sources you guys plan to use? Grace? Social media. Perfect. I love it. So are you talking about just your personal profile, or are you talking about paid ads, or? Okay. Perfect. Yeah, that's great. It's a great way. And a lot of that to me is a different form of just conversation with people, if you look at it that way. Is a way for you to reach out to them and stay in contact with friends, family, and referrals or friends and family that already know you. So that's perfect. Love it. And that's a good way of helping you stay top of mind, right? Not everybody's on social media, but there are a lot. And so if they always see that you're up to something real estate, then when they have a thought about real estate, then they think of you. So that's a great way to do it. Okay, very cool. So sellers are pretty similar in terms of where they found the agent that they chose to work with. Most of them, again, come from friends, family, and referral. Some of them come from, by now, and this number should be higher, the agent that helped them buy that house, right? But to me, 29%, that means 71% of people are not using the agent that helped them buy their house. That's a lot. If you really think about it, where are those agents? Okay, maybe a couple of them have retired by now. Maybe some of them got out of the industry. But 71% is a big number that I think a lot of agents are missing out on simply by not staying in touch, right? So again, command is a great way to help, a great tool to help us stay in touch with those people, to make sure that we're ready when they are. I'm not into the business of trying to pressure people to do things that they're not wanting to do. I'm in the business of helping them when they're ready for help. And again, sometimes that means me encouraging them to help, or giving them ideas on, hey, this could be helpful, but definitely not pressure. That's very different. Anything else stand out to you guys about this chart? Personal contact by agent, referral from another agent, website, visit an open house, for sale sign. Yeah, it's a shock. Yeah. You hear that, Grace? That comment was for you. 71% of people may have used an agent before and are not planning to use that same agent. So even though they just had somebody that helped them buy a house, that's not a guarantee. If that number was closer to 90%, then I'd be like, all right, yeah, we got pretty low chance. But 71% chance that the person that you're thinking of is open to working with you. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, great point. Okay. Do you guys use the opportunities tab in command? Yay, congrats. That's awesome. Especially in this market, it's nice to have a buyer. Cool. Good. So, oh, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's two ways to use opportunities, I think. Number one is to use it for everything. And number two is to just use it when you go under contract. No matter what, when you have a client that goes under contract, you need to have an opportunity for them because that's where you put all of their documents, right, throughout the transaction. And then ultimately it gets sent to Nova Lee. And once those documents are approved and we get the commission check, then that's how you get paid. You can't get paid unless you have the documents, and that's through opportunities. So it is important to understand, at least on that level, how to work with opportunities. But Command also has gone above and beyond and not just said, okay, this isn't just for transactions going on. This is also for anybody in your pipeline. And so you can start, see this first on the far left, it's kind of hard to see, but it says cultivate. It just means like you're nurturing people. Well, that's the next one. But anyway, you're nurturing people and helping them get to the point where they're ready to have a transaction, but they may not be there yet. And you can use those opportunities to classify where people are at in the pipeline. That way, as time approaches, say maybe you had a conversation with somebody and they said, yeah, I'm thinking about buying next summer. As we get closer to next summer, you'll see that they're coming up and saying, hey, this person should be about time to buy. You should definitely check in with them, right? So that's a good way to do it if you want to use it for all of your contacts and have everybody in some sort of an opportunity. I do mine a little bit different because I had a system already in place before they really rolled out this opportunities thing. But it's the same kind of setup. The principles are the same. I have, on Command, you have tags and you can create custom tags, right? I have what I call timeline tags where I'll put a star, 0 to 3 months, and then a star. And that's in red. And to me, that means this person is ready to transact, ready to go under contract, whether it's for a buy or sell in the next 0 to 3 months. So those people, and I'll tell you why I filter them in a second. I have those people in one. Then I have a 3 to 6 month tag to where this person is thinking about buying or selling within the next 3 to 6 months. Then I have 6 to 12 months, and then 1 to 2 years, and then I have 2+ years after that. So every person in my database has one timeline tag of one of those items, or pending, which means they are under contract, or I'm actively, pretty much they're under contract, right? So every person in my database has one of those. And the reason that I do it that way is because I can go into Command and every day, and I can filter my contacts by 0 to 3 months, and I only see the 0 to 3 months people. To me, I should be in touch with those people at least once every 2 to 3 days max. There should be some sort of communication, whether by email, by phone, by text, in-person visit, whatever it may be. But there should be some sort of communication with those people every 2 to 3 days. Then the 3 to 6 month, I think at least once a week. And so once a week, I'll go in and make sure that I have contact with those people, right? And then, so that's how I have my system set up. So you can do it however you want. That's how I have mine. Opportunities lets you essentially do the same thing and filter them through there. Just whatever gets the job done, whatever you feel most comfortable with using, just use that. There's not necessarily one right answer. Any questions about that, or do you guys do things in a little bit different way that you feel like works for you? Okay. You may not feel that you have a lot of going on right now, and that's okay. But I think if now's the best time for you to get into those habits and to get into that practice, so that as your pipeline starts to go, because there will come a day where you're like, holy cow, I've got like 10 people that are ready to transact here pretty soon. The day will come. And if you have your systems down to where it's just routine for you to go in and check that every day, it'll just be that much easier, and you'll make sure you capitalize on all the opportunities that are available to you as opposed to having some fall through the cracks. So that's my recommendation. Okay. We spent 40 minutes together. Do you guys have any ahas so far from today? Grace. Yeah. Right. That's perfect. And there will be those times, guys, there will be plenty of times where you're going to have somebody that you're like, what? They just bought a house. Why didn't they talk to me? I didn't know. Or they just put their house up for sale. I can't believe they didn't use me. There will be plenty of those. Okay. Just be prepared for that. But again, kind of going back to our discussion earlier, as much as we want to capture everything, ultimately you're not going to get them all, but it's just a matter of trying to get as much as you can, or as much as you would like to, right? But yeah, good. Any other ahas? Lucas.
So kind of like
Mhm.
gives us an opportunity to find this client, but also maybe an aha on not having that happen to me where I lose a client.
Exactly. Yeah, you want to be that 29% that keeps them for life, right? Plus the fact, I mean, it's so much less expensive to retain a client than it is to go out and find a new one, right? But if you can do a little bit of both, where you're retaining and you're finding new, then that's when your business really, really grows. And that's what we all want, right? Okay, I'm going to check in with the chat here really quick. Okay, sweet. I think I'm using the microphone, so that should be better. Samantha, if you have any other questions or any questions, let us know. Okay, anything else? Should we continue? Let's continue. Okay, so classify by able, ready, and willing. Gary Keller says that the focus becomes increasingly possible in direct proportion to how clear you are about what you want, when you want it, and what you must do to get it. Who can interpret that for me? Lucas. Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah, the whole funnel. And then get backwards. Yeah, because that's the difference between a lead measure and a lag measure. A lead or a lag measure is not necessarily something you can control today. Like if my goal is to have X amount of transactions, I may not just be able to wake up and go like, okay, I'm gonna go get a transaction today and have it closed today. That may not be possible, right? But what I can do is I can make 20 calls. That's in my control every single day. I can have 20 conversations today with people, right? It's just a matter of how dedicated I'm going to be to that. So yeah, that's a great point. The clearer you are about where you want to go, the easier it is to create the path to get there, right? Okay, so able, ready, and willing. There, you have to have all three in a client, or I should say they have to have all three for a transaction to happen. They may be able to financially buy, they may be willing to buy, but they may be not ready because of maybe some other reasons. Maybe they're maybe it's a job situation that they're not wanting to move yet because they, I don't know, they haven't gotten a job yet, or that's not a good example. Maybe they just got a new job in a new location, or they're going to in 6 months. So they're not ready yet, but they will be then. Or maybe their house simply isn't ready. Maybe it needs to be staged more or do some work. So, but maybe they're ready and they're willing, but they're not financially able. I have a story for this one that I don't want you guys to ever, I don't want this ever to happen to you. So I'm going to tell it to you because it happened to me. I had a cousin of mine. This again was like in my first year of doing real estate, who reached out to me. She's about my age, but she has her own business. She does hair and she's done really well. And then she got married to a guy that had a corporate job. And so they seemed to be doing great. They reached out to me and said, hey, we want to go see some homes in Sandy. And they were like $600,000 price range. I was like, sweet, let's go check them out. So we started to see some homes. They didn't really like any that day. We saw 4 or 5. We went back a couple of days later, saw another 4 or 5. After a couple of weeks, we had seen about 22 homes, and they finally found the home that they loved. I was like, okay, finally, right? We found the right home. We wrote up a contract, and then I said, okay, now it's time for you to go talk to your lender and make sure you get pre-approved. Does anybody have any red flags that are coming up yet? A little bit. Yeah. Okay. It was a rookie mistake. All right. Well, lo and behold, they did not qualify for 600,000. Although her business had done well because of the way she had structured her taxes, it showed that she had a loss on her business, which means her income actually counted against them. So they took her off the loan, and the husband alone only qualified for about $425,000. Right. So we didn't get that house. I sent them new homes. Hey, these are the homes in this price range. And guess what happened to the next 5 homes we saw in the $400,000 price range? Every single one was horrible, right? I didn't like it. Now, this was unfortunate for a couple of reasons. Number one, again, this was almost 5 years ago now. They didn't buy for another 2 years. And during that time, the home prices had gone up significantly. So they missed out on potentially $150,000 of equity that they could have had they purchased 2 years ago, because they just got discouraged. They just didn't like the homes that were there. Again, I see that as my fault, right? I could have helped avoid that, because had we not seen 22 $600,000 homes before seeing a handful of $400,000 homes, I mean, that's a big difference, right? Well, the other, so essentially they didn't buy it. So it was just a waste of time for them and for me. So the biggest problem was what? Well, what lesson did I learn? Always have them get pre-approved first. Appearances can be deceiving, both for good and for bad sometimes, right? They seemed to be doing well. Her business was doing well. I didn't know how she structured her taxes. That made all the difference. And on the other hand, you may see somebody that you're like, yeah, this guy has no money. And then they suddenly qualify for $1 million. And you're like, wow, where are you hiding all that, right? That's okay. It happens. So don't be the judge. Just send them to the lender and have them be the judge, because they're the one that gets to look at all of the stuff, right? But yeah, my general rule of thumb now that I created after that experience was I will never show anybody I will never go out on more than one visit with a client unless they have a pre-approval letter. Because sometimes that's where you meet the people for the first time is, hey, I want to see this house. Let's go see it. And if I'm too stickler on that rule of like, well, no, do you have a pre-approval letter? I'm not going to go show you. I feel like they're just going to go find another agent to show them that house, right? So sometimes that's my opportunity to get to know them. But if that's the case, that's when I'll have this same conversation. I may share some or all of this story with them and let them know that, hey, it's important for you to get pre-approved, not just for me. In fact, when I tell them that, I don't even mention why that's important for me. For me, it's important because I don't want to waste my time, and I want to make sure that you're ready. And for them, it's important for the same reasons. And because really, I don't want them to get discouraged. Because once they start seeing homes in a certain price range, if they have to bump down, that's always bad. If they get to bump up, that's even better, right? That's great. But bumping down is never fun. So yeah, that's my rule of thumb. I won't show anybody more than one set of homes or one visit unless they've got a pre-approval letter there. So don't make that mistake. All right. So they classified, I think this is an opportunities that classified a little bit differently than I had. I had 0 to 3 months. They do 0 to 14 days of people that are A, buyers and sellers. Then you've got people that are B, buyers and sellers, able, ready, and willing to do business in 15 to 60 days, and then C, 60 plus. Again, for me, I feel like it makes it a little more sense because our industry, like the life cycle, the sales cycle is at least 3 months usually. By the time someone says, hey, I'm ready to buy a house, to the time they get pre-approved and then go see homes and then get under contract and close. Usually 3 months is pretty quick, but it's pretty normal, right? If they're ready. If they have some financial issues that they have to fix or credit needs to go up or something, maybe a lot longer. But I don't have enough necessarily in my pipeline to have like a whole section of just 0 to 14 days. That's just me. Maybe if I had more, then I would move to something like this. But right now, 0 to 3 months works for me. That's enough to where I can check that list every day and make sure that I'm in touch with those people at least 2 to 3 times a week. So, any questions? It was. It's true. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Totally. That's right. Yep. It's pretty crazy. And to become non-refundable right from the start, like crazy things happened in COVID years. So I totally agree, but the principle is the same to where you've got your A buyers, you've got your B buyers, and you've got your C sellers. Well, A, B, and C sellers and buyers, right? You get what I'm saying? And whatever your time frame is, it shouldn't be too long, but whatever that time frame is so that you can have constant communication with them. If I had a list of in my A buyers and sellers of 100 people, to me, I've got to narrow that down because 100 people to have that many consistent contacts with every 2 or 3 days is a lot for me, especially if I'm trying to do other things of my business and have other conversations with other people that are not A buyers, right? So, but if I have a handful, then I can definitely manage that. So, figure out whatever your system is that works best for you. Go ahead. Yeah, your buyer. Okay. Yeah, it's a great question. So I have some thoughts on this because I've done I had somebody in a very similar situation. They said they want to buy in March, and this was 2 months ago, and they asked me, and it's a previous client of mine. He bought a townhome, now he's getting married, they're going to buy a home together, and he'd asked the same question: when should I talk to a lender? My answer is always as soon as possible, because oftentimes a lender will find something in the file that said, hey, we need you to fix this before 6 months from now. That if they don't take a look at it until 6 months from now, it could be a simple thing like, I don't know, maybe to fix their credit, that they just need to pay off this $5,000 thing. And maybe they could do that in 3 or 4 months. Whereas if they've got 10 days to do that, that may be a lot harder. So I like to have the lender check ahead of time and do kind of a preliminary pre-approval. But the actual pre-approval letter that you get, I also have feelings about those. I think you're right that typically they last for 60 to 90 days or whatever. There's not an actual expiration date on them because it's really just saying, hey, this person I checked out, they're good to go. Things can change during that time. So no matter what, if I have a pre-approval letter, unless it's within the last week or two, I usually like to ask the lender, which is something so easy for them to do, and they're willing, all of them are very willing to do it, to get an updated pre-approval letter for a particular property. And by putting, a more recent date on there, preferably today, and a price that I think is advantageous to the buyer in that situation. So let's say they qualify for $500,000 and the home is being listed for $490,000. I may or may not have the lender keep it at $500,000, or I might want them to put it at $490,000, just to show them. I don't know. It depends on, I guess, who you're talking to, but some people will think, okay, well, if they can qualify for 500, let's push them to get that price instead. Others may say, well, yeah, I'd like to see that they can qualify for plenty more. Like I had a client once that qualified for like 600,000, but the home he was trying to buy, and this was 4 years ago up in Brigham City, was only like 300,000. And we put the full 600,000 because in that case, it just showed the seller that like, wow, this person is very financially capable of buying this house. So we are totally fine, but this is what the price is. So not a very clear answer on that part, but definitely I like to have them talk to him sooner. The other part that I like about it is that now you get not just you, but the lender is also, if you get a good lender, will keep tabs with them to be in constant communication. So you're kind of a partnership. And so between the two of you, now you've got more traction to be able to stay in touch with those people to make sure that they don't fall through the cracks as well. So, yeah. Okay, great question though, because that comes up a lot. In fact, not to sidetrack too much, but I just had my brother and his wife, they said they want to buy by the end of next year. I already had them talk to the lender and they're already on their way, because especially with taxes is a big one. If you have a job that's not a W-2, so you don't get paid hourly or salary, maybe you get commission, or maybe you have an hourly job plus commission. That commission, they need to see a 2-year tax history on that before they can count it. And back in I did summer sales for 7 years. And back in those days, everyone was saying, oh, write everything off on your taxes. It's so cool. You can tell them that, well, it's all real stuff and it's all legal, but you can tell them that you drove your car from here to here. You can write off this many miles. You can write all this stuff off. And that was the coolest thing, because at the time I didn't hardly pay anything on taxes at all. But then I tried to go buy a house. And what did they tell me? you don't make any money. You can't buy a house with no money. I'm like, well, no, I do. It's just, my taxes are showing. Well, they go off of your taxes. So that's what they take. And so I wasn't able to at that time. Yeah, sometimes just knowing how to structure your taxes is really good. I've even had it where for me, I was trying to buy a property and I had, it was one of the good years of real estate that I was trying to make it so that I could qualify for this house we wanted to buy by at the same time, not trying to write off as much as I possibly could. Does that make sense? So that way I could write off what I could on my taxes, but still show enough to qualify for. And so I needed to know what that tax number needed to be. So I first went to talk to my lender and said, this is the price of the home that we're trying to get. How much money do I need to show that I make in order to get this home? And he told me that number. And then I went to my CPA and said, this is what we need to write. We can write off, if I'm able to, we can write off as much as we can up until this point. And we did that and it worked out. So I've heard of that sometimes. I know they used to back before the 2008 market crash, but I know so it may be kind of coming back a little more and maybe more common, but I haven't personally done that before. Really? Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah, it's true. It's kind of a catch-22, right? Yeah. Okay, sweet. Well, that's good to know. But yeah, the lenders will be able to kind of help you navigate that. So especially before tax season, it's good to have your buyers talk to them if they're planning to buy soon. Okay. Why qualify? We kind of already talked about it, like with my cousins. If I had had that conversation, I personally feel like we would have seen some homes. They would have liked one of them enough to see that as a stepping stone to get to another home later. And they would have gone forward with a purchase. And then in 2 years, they would have had that $150,000 of equity that they could have used to get to that next house. Unfortunately, that didn't happen for them. And so then 2 years later, they bought a home for $450,000, but those were homes that were, in the $300,000 price range at the time they had been looking. So it really worked out poorly for them. Obviously, I didn't get paid anything for that work. And so it didn't work out great for me in that moment. But it's definitely a win-win if you can make sure that they're ready, willing, and able before you really get going with them. So the best way to do that is to follow a checklist. I use Trello. I don't know if you guys have heard of Trello before. I know that there's checklists that you can create within Command. So if you're starting fresh, Command may be a great place for you to really get your checklist going. You may use notes in your phone or any other source. But the point is, I have it so that I have my checklist of 130 items that I do every single time I have a buyer, from the day that I have an appointment with them to the day that they close and beyond, right? And that is easy to copy and change the title to this person's name. And now I've got the same checklist. That's how I've avoided these mistakes again, because I follow that checklist for every single client. And as soon as I come across something that I tweak that. Every week I'm changing something on that checklist. Like, oh, I should have this come sooner. Or, oh, I need to add this so that I make sure that this mistake doesn't happen. Maybe it'll only happen once every 50 transactions, but I definitely don't want it to happen again. So let me make sure that that's a part of my checklist to avoid that. So one of those items is have them talk to a lender, pre-approval letter. And I have a checkbox. Do I have a pre-approval letter in hand or not? And I'm aware of that as we're progressing, so that when they send me more homes, hey, can we go see these homes? My job is, that would be awesome. And then kind of check in where are they at with the lending? Have you turned in your documents? It's really not hard to do that, but I don't know if I can say that. It's one of the hardest things for people to turn in their documents to get pre-approved, right? Sometimes it takes people weeks to get that stuff. There are clients, like I had one recently that she was fast. Within 1 day, she had to turn in everything she needed to, and that was awesome. But those are rare. And most of the time, it takes them longer. So that's another reason why it's good, because you don't want to go see a home. Hey, I'm ready to write the contract. Okay, but we don't have a pre-approval letter. Oh, because the lender doesn't have all of my documents yet. And to try and get all of that done in 1 day is just stressful and not the greatest, doesn't give you the greatest chance of success. So having that done beforehand is just way easier. Okay. And then don't discriminate. Abide by the fair housing regulations. Okay, this is an example of what you could do. A buyer lead sheet, to where there's a couple of reasons why I like something like this. And that's because as part of my 36 touch program, I want to make sure I know when their birthday is, right? And usually I find that out if Facebook doesn't have it. Most of the time Facebook has it, which is a pro tip. You know, you can check people's birthdays on Facebook, right? But sometimes they don't have their birthday on there. But what I found is if you go to their profile and you click on the search button on their profile, you can type birthday, and oftentimes friends and family of them will say happy birthday to them on a consistent date. And you're like, all right, sweet, January 16th it is. So I've done that before. But this is also a great way for you to know when their birthday is. And that's by simply giving them a form to fill out. You could do it online, or you could do this here. But of course, you also want to know kind of what kind of home they're looking for and all those things. I don't use a specific sheet. I prefer to do it where I'm having a conversation with them, and there's certain questions I make sure to ask so that I write down in my notes. But you can totally do it this way as well and have them fill out a sheet, and that could really help. I feel like it's more personal to have that conversation with them, because I feel like if I'm just giving them a sheet to fill out that asks them, you know, how much money they have down and has them fill out all these check boxes, I feel like it's a little more corporate. It gets a little corporate feel, but that's just me. Have you guys used a sheet like this before? Okay. I'm not trying to knock it, but again, it's a personality thing. That's not my style. If that's your style, great. Let's see. All right, we're going to skip that for a minute. I think we are. All right. The pre-listing is a similar thing. There are some things that I want to make sure I know. Like most of the time, I'm going to know how they got in touch with me. But if it's a referral, I always like to ask them. And this is not to try to toot my horn, but it's more because it gives them a chance to kind of put into words why I'm here, or why they chose to work with me, or at least up to this point, right? Why am I at an appointment to potentially work with them? So, so-and-so mentioned that that you were a great agent. Okay, that's awesome. Thank you. I'm definitely going to reach out to them and say thank you. What specifically did they say that we did well? So that they can have a chance to say, well, you guys did really well with the negotiating. And that's really important to me. Kind of gives you an insight on what matters to them, right? Because whatever they say, you want to make sure you knock it out of the park, right? If they say negotiation, okay, well, why is that important to you? You can dive deeper into figure that out. What would happen if you don't have a good negotiator? Or what happens if the negotiations go really well in your favor? How would you feel after that? You kind of want to know why that matters. And on your notes, I write that down and I circle it. And in my preparation for my next meeting with them, or just throughout the week, I make sure I look at those notes to make sure I know what matters to them, to make sure that I do that. Like I said, make sure like 10 times. Make sure you do it. Let's see. Okay, just similar to a checklist of what to do when you have somebody that's ready to buy, you should have some sort of a follow-up plan with people that are not necessarily looking to buy or sell right now. So maybe you have somebody that came to an open house. So clearly they're kind of in the market. A lot of times people, when you ask them what their time frame is, they'll just be like, oh, I'm just looking. The reality is, what that interprets to me, similar thing if you go into a store and they ask you that question right off the bat. Can I help you find anything? What's 90% of the time, what are people going to say? No, I'm just looking. Is that true? Well, if you found the right item, then what? Then you're going to buy it, right? So I'm looking for the right item, which is always why it's a better question in those situations to ask them what brought you in today, because then it's not a yes or no answer that people can just tell you to go away from. But with following up people, if someone comes into an open house, as opposed to saying, do you have any questions for me? Ask them specific questions that they have to give you an actual response to, not just a yes or no. How did you hear about the open house? That could give you really good insight on if they have an agent or not without asking them, do you have an agent? Because that's the type of question that agents ask that is similar to that department store when you walk into at the mall. Someone comes into the open house and they say, are you already working with an agent? Whether they are or not, 9 times out of 10, they're going to say yes, because why? They want you to go away. They don't want to be bothered, right? So we're in the business of bothering. No, I'm just kidding. Not in the business of bothering people. But that's a much better question to ask is, how did you hear about the open house? What stood out to you about this home? And then, I mean, I don't think it's a terrible question to say, do you have any questions? As long as that's not the only question you're asking them, right? If you ask that along with others, then maybe that's okay. So what does your system look like? If you have somebody come into an open house and they look through the house and then they walk out and you don't have their information, you don't know where they came from, you don't know why they went, you don't know if they're working with an agent or not, huge missed opportunity, right? So what does your system look like to make sure that you capitalize on everyone that comes through? Now, if they have an agent, there's not much you can do, but a lot of them don't. And if they don't, and because most of the time that home is not going to be the right fit for them, or not the right time, or not the right price, it's kind of a random thing. They see an open house sign, they go through it, and then it's hit or miss, right? They could also find it from online, and they may have a specific reason for coming to that house, right? So you got to find those types of things out, but it's important to have your system and from following up with them. What are you going to do on Monday after the open house? You're going to reach out to them. What are you going to say? Where do you go from there? So then that ultimately will lead you to converting them to having an appointment. I think to me, the appointment is really where it gets, like, that's my goal. When I'm calling somebody that has interest in buying or selling, my goal is not to help them buy or sell a house in that moment. My goal is to, how can I set an appointment with them? That's the sale for me in that moment, because I'm not trying to jump from step A to Z, right? You kind of got to take it one step at a time. And so for me, that's the next step is let's sit down and talk about this. Anytime I have somebody that says, hey, I'm thinking about buying or I'm thinking about selling, immediately in my mind, I go to, okay, let's get an appointment together. Let's talk. And so that's my process. That helps me convert them to ultimately buy or sell. And then staying top of mind, that's critical. We've talked about that. 36 touch is a great way to do that. Having some sort of a routine that you get into with clients as well as a whole. So maybe, like, some people have it where they write 5 thank you cards every day. And maybe that's something you want to do, or set a day aside where you do that. The way I have it is that every day of the week has a different purpose, like a different call purpose. So for example, on Mondays, that's the day where I call my SOI. And I'll have different reasons for calling them, right? As I mentioned before, we want to make sure I'm bringing something of value. And then I go through command and I filter it from my SOI. So then I filter it from least, like, person I contacted least recent, right? That way I contact them. I start with them first. Then on Tuesdays, have you guys done farming? Have you heard about farming in real estate? It's another. Not that. I'm not sure what they call that. That could be farming, but this is different, fortunately, because that would not be fun for me. The farming that we talk about in real estate is where you focus on one specific demographic, usually on a location or a neighborhood, and you do certain activities or certain things to basically earn their business over time. So for example, I used to live in a small townhome community in Vineyard, and I had systematic things throughout the year that I would do. So we would hold an event just for the neighborhood. We did a service project just for the neighborhood. And this was just something that I created. So I was out delivering flyers for this event. Has nothing to do with real estate, but again, it's just a reason for me to bring value and have conversations with people that will eventually lead to real estate conversations. But that's one of the ways that I've done that has worked really well for me in my business. And that's farming. So Tuesdays is my farming day, where I'm going to do something for my neighborhood. Either it's calling them, talking to them, creating a plan, something like that. And then Wednesdays is different. So every day of the week for me, it kind of has a different focus. That helps alleviate some of the monotony that sometimes can come through sitting down and making calls, because I'm talking to different people for different reasons, while at the same time creating a system to where I do have constant communication with these different groups that I'm targeting, right? Okay. And then of course, qualified buyers and sellers. You've got to have some place where you can see, it can be command, can be something else, where you can say, okay, at any given point, if someone were to ask you, who are your A buyers right now, that you could pull it up and you know exactly where to find it. It's really easy, because you should be doing that on your own. Again, every 2 to 3 days at least, having communication with the A buyers and sellers. And then the B buyers and sellers. How often are you talking to them, and how do you know you're talking to them that often? Right? Is it through command and you're doing that, or what? Do you guys have systems like this kind of set up already? Kind of partly there. Okay, totally fine. That's, to me, one of my favorite parts about the job, is to find ways to systematize things, to make them part of my routine. It just saves so much time later. It's like creating one template and then using that same template over and over and over again with just changing 1 or 2 little things. I remember when I first became an agent, I had an open house. And then a few months later, I had another open house for a different house. And I was like, well, I can't make the same flyer like last time. I got to do it from scratch. So I started, I spent hours on these 2 different flyers for these open houses, right? The dumbest thing, right? I think that kind of stuff happens all the time, where it's like, hey, maybe spend hours one time making your open house flyer, which I keep going to command because these are all new things that they've released in the last year. But they have open house flyers already on command that you can just easily, they're templates already, so you can just easily change. That saves you so much time. You just do it once and then you know what you're doing. And sure, over time you can change things here and there, but it's not like you have to create something new every time. Plus, it helps you. I mean, if you think about it, all the successful big companies do that. Like McDonald's, whether you love them or hate them, they have a system for everything. There's a reason that sandwich, that cheeseburger that I get for my son, whether we're here or in Texas or in Florida or wherever, is the exact same, no matter where we go, because they have their systems down. I don't know how that looks, but I've kind of seen some pictures in some of these fast food chains where they have like a picture of what the, where the pickles go, and to that point, they're having their systems dialed in so that you can expect the same result every single time. And I'm sure they've done their improvements over the years, but overall it's the same thing. So that's the same thing for us, right? We have our system, which to me is our checklists and our calendar, whatever your calendar is, and having that be kind of your routine so that it's a systemized thing. It's easy. It takes the friction out of thinking, well, what am I going to do today for work? You just get right to it, and you can call and you can make calls and talk to people. And that's much more efficient. And I think you'll have more fun when you have it that way. Plus, you can tailor it to yourself. Like every day of the week is a little bit differently on when I work, because my wife has a schedule and I have kids, and there's certain days I work more than other days, right? And that's fine. You can tailor it to whatever your specific needs are. Okay, I don't want to ramble. Anybody have any other questions or ahas? We might even get out early today, if you're okay with that. You excited to go to work? Okay, no worries. Left. Okay, so my challenge for you is this, because we were talking about qualifying buyers and sellers, is to, whether you have it already in place or not, but make sure you have a system for, like some people call it, different buckets, to where are your A buyers and sellers, where are your B buyers and sellers, and where are your C buyers and sellers? How do you find them? How do you access them? And if that's not already done, go through all of your contact lists. I know it's going to take some time the first time, and qualify each one of them. Put them in one of those different categories. And then the second part of the challenge is to make sure that you have some sort of I don't know if it's a reminder on your phone or put it in your calendar or whatever works for you, but some sort of a system to where you're reaching out to those people every 2 to 3 days for the A category, every week or 2 for B category, and then every month or 2, which is 36 touch, really, right? Because 36 touch is really just an overall this is for everybody. I'm going to make sure I reach out to everybody. So to me, that's kind of the C category. If you've got your 36 touch program going, that's your C category. The B is where you have a little more to it because you're going to stay a little bit more in touch with these people. And it's going to be usually a little more real estate specific because they've already made mention to you that they're going to be thinking of buying or selling. So in other words, I could give them a market update. I could call them and just be like, hey, I know you mentioned you're thinking about moving in 3 months or buying in 3 months. I just wanted to give you a quick little update on what's been happening in the market. That's a phone call that I can have that adds value to them because they've kind of already asked me in a way to do that because they're preparing. And most people are going to say, hey, thank you. Appreciate that afterwards. If I just call my mom and had a market conversation, that might be weird because she's not planning on moving anytime soon, right? But the B category is, you could also give them an update on the interest rates, right? That could be another thing, or in a specific neighborhood that they were interested in, just let them know what's been happening there, whatever it may be. But those, again, finding a system to reach out to those people. And then the A, buyers and sellers, same thing. So any questions? Yeah. Sure. Thank you. Mhm. Yeah. So they've kind of hinted that they're planning on selling, but they haven't said, and I want you to be my agent. Okay. Yeah. That's a great question. How well do you know this person? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Sure. Okay. Because I think for me, like I'm thinking back on a couple of situations that I've had similar. One of them was that a neighbor of my parents. So in the neighborhood that I grew up, one of the I'm on that Facebook neighborhood page, and a neighbor right across the street and one house over had mentioned, hey, we're thinking of selling. And I'd heard of these people. I didn't know them because they had moved in after I moved out, but my parents are still there and like I'm still involved with the neighborhood. So I actually just went and knocked on their door because they said, hey, we're thinking of selling our house by owner. If you guys know of anybody, send them our way, as in somebody to buy. But I'm the agent and I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to go have a conversation with them. So I went and knocked on their door, which was very intimidating, but I did it and ultimately was able to get their business and help them sell their house. It was awesome. That was a pretty direct way to go about it in that situation because I didn't know them at all. So it's not like I could just call her up and be like, hey, I noticed you're selling your house. Like that would have been very different. I had to be very direct with her. With some of my other friends and family that I kind of think they're going to work with me, but they haven't specifically said that. And they make comments such as, yeah, we're going to be moving or we're thinking about selling or whatever. So sounds like this kind of situation. I assume the sale, have you guys heard that term before? Where you have this mentality that, yes, she is working with me, only to the point that it makes sure that I'm providing her value as if she was. So in other words, if she came to you today and said, yes, Stacy, I want you to be my agent, what kinds of things will you be doing here in the next 2-3 weeks to help her with this process? And one of them could be, doing a CMA report, or one of them could be giving her tips on what to do to prep her home for staging and stuff. So kind of having those things and reaching out to her and said, hey, I know you'd mentioned a while back that you're thinking about making this move. I just came across this and wanted to send it over your way just to see if it would be helpful or something. That way it's like not so direct, like, hey, work with me, but it's just giving value, right? Yeah. I think it depends on the person, right? If they're, yeah, it just depends on their personality. I just play it off of whatever you feel like sounds the most natural to them. But definitely, you do want to have an appointment as soon as possible with that person. And so, because at the appointments, that's your time to showcase what you're going to do to help her sell. And specific, more important than even that, is to figure out what her needs and goals are so that you can make sure that like her situation better. Oftentimes, if there's a situation where somebody has they're interviewing multiple agents, oftentimes the one that gets the job is not necessarily the one that has the most beautiful presentation or that even has the most experience. It's oftentimes the one that asks them the most questions, because that's when they feel heard, when they have a chance to talk. So trying to, again, shifting your focus from let me get her house sold to how can I get an appointment with her? Like that's your sale right now that you got to work on is to get an appointment with her. So yeah, you could send her some stuff, but I would say sooner than later to have a conversation and just mention exactly that. Say, I know that 2 weeks ago you had mentioned that you were planning on getting your house ready for sale, and then say something like, I've found that, it often takes 2 or 3 months for people to get their homes ready. And that's where I'm helpful with. I'd love to swing by sometime and kind of go through your house with you or something like that. It's kind of direct, but she's already told you that she's making a move. And people aren't dumb. Like they're not, that might be a rude word to say, but like people don't say comments like that without thinking, well, she is an agent, because otherwise she wouldn't have said that, in my opinion. Yeah. Yep. Right. And the thing is, she expects that. Yeah. She's hinted at it. Mm-hmm. But even before then, my whole thing, I read this book called Spin Selling. I don't know if you guys have heard of that, but it's awesome sales book. It had this picture where it showed those old-fashioned scales where it's like, if there's more weight on this side, this thing goes up. So it had this stack of value on one side that was heavier than the price on this other side. And the point that he was making was, if you have enough value, then this price doesn't matter, right? As long as the value is more than the price, then you're in a good position. If the price is heavier to the client than the value that you've provided or the value they perceive, that's when it's not good. So in other words, it's not okay to ask for the sale until you've built enough value to justify it. But I do think it's important to go to ask for the appointment, because that's when you can build value so that you can ask for the sale as soon as possible. Because it's got to be official, because you also don't want to be wasting your time the next few weeks if she's already planning on using her sister that just so happens to be an agent. Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. So that's where I would just say, assume like she doesn't have that and go forward with asking for the appointment and showing that, hey, because that's what she would expect an agent to do, right? Like, you are a salesperson at the end of the day, and she hinted at possibly being in the market. So yeah, you're going to at least give yourself a chance. Because the other opposite thing to do that's not good is to assume it to the point that you just think she's working with you. And then the day comes where her home is listed already. And you're like, wait, I thought you were working with me, because you didn't step up and have that conversation. So it is intimidating. It's not the most fun, but I think that's definitely what I would do. Get the appointment and then ask for the closing at that point. Like, bring your exclusive right to sell agreement at that appointment and have that at the end, after you've talked about the value, after you've talked about her needs, her goals, what she wants, what good outcomes would happen if this is successful, what would be bad in your life if this is not successful, why is it important to you to have an agent that cares so much about you, whatever your strengths are, ask her questions about why that matters to her, and then you have an opportunity to present on those strengths and then ask for the sale. So you'll get it. Yeah, that's exciting. It's very exciting. Okay, any other questions or comments? Do we have anything else online? I don't see any other comments.